Hi everybody, you're at home with Melissa and I'm really glad that you're joining me for this video. In it, I want to talk to you about potatoes. And this one is not rotten, it's a purple potato, that's why it's so dark. But anyway, more specifically, what I want to talk to you about is growing potatoes in the winter and indoors. Those are two things that a lot of times people think you can't do. You can't grow potatoes inside and you can't grow them in the winter, but you can. In fact, you can grow anything inside anytime you want if you can give it everything it needs. And sure, that can be challenging, but in this case, it's actually really easy because what you want to do first is, being that it is wintertime, your potatoes, especially, well, not everywhere, but because some people are really fortunate and they have year-round growing seasons. I'm not one of them. Right now, it is 4 degrees Fahrenheit outside, which I think is like negative 15.5 degrees Celsius. And we have this much snow on the ground. So growing them outdoors really is not possible. So we're going to grow them indoors. Why not? And the first thing we have to do is wake them up because they're sleeping. They're dormant. So we have to convince them that it's time for them to wake up and get to business, get to work, get their business done. Now, how you do that, it's actually pretty easy. There's two really simple ways that I know of to do it, and I've used both. They both work. One is simply to put the potatoes on a piece of cardboard or in a shallow cardboard box or an egg carton on a container, on a counter in your house that gets a little bit of sun. You want it to be about room temperature, and your house is going to be, because that's your rooms. And you want it to get some sunlight, but not direct sunlight. And that will get them to sprout. And what that is here you have, all right, see these little spots? Wait, let me find a good one for you. There we go, there's a good one. See this little fella there? That little eye? Okay, these little things that stick out in the potatoes, from which sprouts will grow later, those are called eyes. And if you set them on that piece of cardboard or in that box or on that egg, in the egg carton, on a somewhat sunny countertop, they will sprout. They'll start to grow greens out of those eyes, and you want that because you're waking them up, remember? And once you get greens that are this long to this long, you know, and a ½ inch to an inch, you can let them grow longer if you want, but you want to wait till they're at least a ½ inch long or so. Then you can plant them. And because you've awakened them, you've let them know, hey, it's time to grow. Another way you can do that is simply by putting them in a cardboard box or a paper bag along with an apple, banana, or onion. And the reason you do that is because, I know it sounds weird, but those things, as they're sitting there, they release ethylene. The ethylene also will cause the potatoes to sprout. They'll be convinced that it's time to grow, and they'll start growing. It might take 2 to 3 weeks, but, and this is true even when you're planting outside during the growing season, it's a good thing to pre-sprout them because it actually gives you not just a head start on things, but you tend to get a better yield. And so it's a really good idea to do that. You have to if you're growing it inside. Well, you don't have to. You can just chuck your potatoes in the dirt indoors as well in the winter and hope for the best. But you'll have a lot better success if you pre-sprout. You know, so I really do advise that you do that. And you can either use a whole potato just by putting the potato in the dirt and growing it that way, or you can cut them. Yeah, you don't need the whole potato. You can cut them into little pieces. What you want to make sure to do is to have at least 2 to 3 eyes on each section that you cut. And if you've got the greening or the chitting, which it's that pre-sprouting is called, if you've done that, you've got the greens there, you want to make sure you have at least 2 to 3 eyes per section that you cut. And if you have the 2 to 3 eyes, what you'll get in your harvest is most likely going to be fewer potatoes but larger. If you go with a section that has 4 to 5 eyes, something like that, you're more likely to get more potatoes but smaller. And so you can kind of decide what your outcome is going to be by how many eyes you allow on your potato. And if you are cutting the potato up and having just a few eyes per section, you want to leave that piece of potato sit on a countertop or something for a day or so that it can kind of callus over a little bit. You don't want to just cut it up and stick it right in the dirt. I mean, you can, but Again, you'll have better results if you leave it set for a day or two. And then if you've done the chitting and you've allowed things to grow eyes and you put them in the dirt, you're good to go. What you want to be aware of, though, is that if you are doing the chitting, you're doing the pre-sprouting, yeah, it's quite likely that the potato will turn green, the one that you're growing from. But you may have heard that green potatoes, it's green because it contains a toxic substance. True, that is true. But if you're doing the pre-sprouting and that potato that you're growing from has turned green, that is the one and only time you really don't need to concern yourself about it. Well, actually, you wouldn't need to concern yourself about it anyway. It does contain a toxin, but in order for it to hurt you, you'd have to eat a lot more potatoes than anybody's ever going to eat, really. But, you know, you don't want to eat things that are toxic. So you're probably going to stay away from eating green potatoes. Again, the one time you don't have to worry about them turning green is the potatoes that you're letting the eyes grow out on to pre-green, pre-sprout, chit. Those potatoes can go ahead and turn green on you. You don't need to worry about it, and they will. And then you plant them, and the potato that turned green, you're not going to be eating that after the harvest anyway. It's going to do its job and grow more potatoes for you, and then it's just not going to be worth eating. It's not going to be useful. It's not going to be anything you're going to want to eat when you dig up those potatoes at harvest time. So it's not like you have to worry that you're going to be eating that green potato. It won't happen. So anyway, you plant those, and you're good to go. You can plant them down outdoors. They say like 6 inches, I think a lot of times you hear, or you can plant them 3 inches, and when the green starts to appear above the ground, you kind of mound dirt up around them. You can do the mounding and things like that indoors as well, but you don't need to. You want to make sure, however, that whatever you plant these potatoes in, your biggest concerns are, one, you want to make sure it gets a lot of light. So plant it in a window with southern exposure, use grow lights, plant it in, if you're lucky enough to have one, a sunroom or a grow room, those kind of things, and because they do like a lot of sunlight for the plant to grow. You also want to make sure that you plant it in a container that gives it enough room for those roots to grow. Remember, with potatoes, what you're harvesting is what's beneath the ground. So you want to make sure that you give it like yay much space, a couple of feet of space for your potatoes to grow. You know, you don't plant it in a regular container that has 6 inches below it or something. You won't get any potatoes. So make sure you plant it near the top of a really deep container. You can actually buy sometimes plant bags that they sell now that are specifically made for growing potatoes, and they're wonderful because they have little flaps on the side, so you can harvest, say, you can reach in through this little flap once the potatoes would be bigger and pull out 1 or 2 potatoes while leaving the rest in there to grow longer. So it's kind of cool, and you can see them, you can check on them, you can open the flap, look, and then close the flap again. That's pretty neat. Or just a really deep container that you have, or go out and get 5-gallon buckets. You can get them at your hardware stores. You can get them maybe from friends of yours who have restaurants and things, and just say, hey, you know, when you're done using your 5-gallon plastic buckets that your pickles or whatever it is come in, can I have 1 or 2 or 3 or 20, whatever it is, you know. And a lot of times, you know, restaurants will be glad to share those with you. But if not, and you have to go and buy them, they're really cheap, you know, at a hardware store or a department store, home improvement store, things like that. Really cheap. You can get a 5-gallon bucket and plant your potatoes in that, and it'll give it enough room for the potatoes to grow beneath. And so that's really all you need to know about those kind of things. You want to make sure while your potatoes are growing that you don't keep that water super soggy wet, because as I said with my concerns about growing ginger and turmeric aquaponically 2 videos ago, I did a video on growing the turmeric and the ginger, and one of the methods that I'm growing it in is an aquaponic system, and I'm concerned that I might foul that up and actually rot them, because again, the part that you're using of these plants is the part that's below the ground, and that's the part that swells up and becomes the fruit that you eat, or the root that you eat, whatever the case may be. But yeah, root that you eat would be a better way to say that. But these things that grow under the ground are particularly prone to rotting. So if your ground is too wet and you keep it too wet all the time, you're going to probably encourage your potatoes to rot rather than grow. So make sure that you don't give them dry soil. They need some moisture to grow. They're plants, but you don't want it to be soggy, sopping wet all the time. You don't want marshy conditions for your potatoes because that will rot them. So make sure you water them, but that you don't overwater them. If you have a container that has holes in the bottom that will allow excess water to escape, that's a nice system too. That should be about all that I can think of that we need to know for growing potatoes indoors, and it is pretty exciting. So I've already planted some Yukon Golds and some Purple Majestic. Yukon Gold potatoes were introduced to the public in 1980, and I really enjoy them. I really like them. They're not an heirloom potato, obviously, introduced in 1980, but they were developed not by splicing of genes, just selective growing things. And they're really yummy. I really like the yellow potatoes in general. And I'm growing the Purple Majestic, which is an heirloom variety, and I think it's going to be wonderful. I like the idea of having purple potatoes and lots of unusual colors in my foods, so that'll be neat too. And we'll keep track. I planted some directly in the ground as soon as my seed potatoes arrived. I just stuck some of them, small potatoes, 2 inches or smaller. You probably want to go with planting the whole potato. Larger than that, you probably want to cut them up. And I had some that were small, and I put them directly in the dirt, so without pre-sprouting. So I have a couple of I have 1 container of each, a couple of containers of potatoes growing that have not been pre-sprouted, but I still have plenty left that I'm pre-sprouting now. And if I didn't mention it, I'm not sure I mentioned it, it might take 2 to 3 weeks for them to get to where you want them to be in terms of those sprouts, those little greens being long enough before you can plant them. So I have the rest of my seed potatoes are set out on cardboard on a nice semi-light shelf. Actually, it's, all right, I'll admit this, they're actually sitting right now on a scaffold. But I'm going to, because I'm using all the counters in the kitchen right now, and when I finish doing what I'm doing with that, clear the counters back off, then I will move them to the kitchen counters to clear off my scaffold so that I can use it for the next thing. And I'm going to include you guys in all that because we might be doing some things that are a lot of fun that you might enjoy too. When you put them on your shelf, don't forget, you want to examine each of your seed potatoes first. You're looking at them, looking at them, looking at them. Find the side that has the most eyes and put that side facing upward so that you have the most greens you can grow in. And those are some helpful hints. If you have any more of your own that you want to share with everybody, please let us know. Drop something in the comment section. Likewise, if you have a question, drop it in the comment section. And I try to get to them right away. I haven't been as good about that lately as I should. My apologies to anybody who's waiting. I will get to those as soon as possible. And we will respond to your questions. If I don't know the answer, I'll look it up. I'll call experts. I'll do whatever I need to do to get the answers to these questions for you, and we'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And for those of you who have some more growing tips to share with us, we'd really appreciate that too. And thanks again for joining us. You go out there and have a good day. I hope you're out there planting potatoes too, because it's really fun. Especially, like I said, you get those grow bags with the flaps. Oh, that's so cool. You can look at them while they're growing. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Anyway, go ahead and do what you're doing and enjoy, live, love, learn, and we'll see you again here soon. Bye-bye.